Hi everyone, and welcome back to another live event here on the Vegas Creative Software YouTube channel. I'm Gary Rubholz, and today I want to pick up where we left off talking about Vegas Pro 18 a couple of weeks ago. Before I get started, I just want to mention that for some reason the lawn care service has decided to set up shop right outside my window at this particular time. So you might hear some noise. I've got the windows closed, but I'm still hearing it, so I apologize for that. If you've been with us for the past few weeks, you know that I've been doing a series of trainings on both Vegas Pro 18 and Vegas Post Suite. Last week we talked about Vegas Image. The week before that it was Vegas Effects, and we started it off 3 weeks ago with a look at the new features of Vegas Pro. Today I want to dig a little bit more deeply into some of the new features of Vegas Pro 18. And talk about some of those in specific. So let me bring my computer back up here. Basically what you see here is a little information about Vegas Pro, which of course comes with Vegas Pro Edit, the normal standard SKU of Vegas Pro 365, which is a subscription option, and Vegas Pro 18 Suite. One thing that I want to mention that sometimes seems to confuse people is that all of these options have exactly the same version of Vegas Pro in them. So even though Vegas Pro Edit is cheaper than Vegas Pro Suite, you're not getting any less Vegas Pro when you purchase Vegas Pro Edit. You're simply not getting the add-ons that come along with those other options. So what I talk about today will cover all these options because they're exactly the same Vegas Pro. Along the bottom here, this is just a listing of all of the new features in Vegas Pro 18, and you can see there are a ton of them. Obviously, I'm not going to have time to go into detail on all of these. So what I'd like to do is to talk and specifically focus on some of the new filters and effects tools that we have in Vegas Pro 18. And I think I'm probably not even going to be able to get to all of these in the time that we have. But I did talk about some of them 3 weeks ago when I did the first introduction to Vegas Pro. I remember talking at that time about the black bar filter. I mentioned the logarithmic exposure tool and the color grading panel, and the new auto contrast stuff also in the color grading panel. And I believe I even looked at the style transfer plugin a little bit. So if I don't get to those in this presentation, you can always go back to the archived version of the first presentation from the first week of August here and take a look at those. What I want to do is spend most of my time today talking about the new motion tracking panel. It's really an awesome tool and really is very powerful, and it's so much easier to use now than the implementation that we had prior to Vegas Pro 18 that I want to show you how that works. And in that discussion I'll also talk about transferring the tracking information that you analyze through the tracking panel into position-aware OFX plugins. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that. So cool, let me switch over to Vegas Pro here and let's get started. We'll start right away with the motion tracking panel. So I'm going to add a clip to my timeline, and now I've got an event on my timeline and it looks like this, and I'll play it, and just the car rolling down the street. Now it actually looks surprisingly stable as far as the camera being steady, but we soon find out that it's really not. I'm going to switch momentarily to best full. I may have to switch back to preview as I start doing more and more to this project, just because I'm working on a small laptop and it's not really capable of all the processing that I'm going to be asking it to do. But for now I've gone to best full. So let's say what I wanted to do here is I wanted to overwrite the grille of this car with some branding. So I'm going to go to my text generator, and of course I'm going to say Vegas Pro 18, and I want that to overprint the grille of that car. Well, normally I could come in and I could resize my text, and I could drop it into place, and I'll just do that really quickly. And maybe we try to call that done. Well, we can see right away that it doesn't really have the right perspective. And if I play this, obviously the camera actually moves more than it appeared when there was nothing else on the screen as a reference. So this isn't going to work because it doesn't look like the text is part of the car. So let's start over and add a piece of text to this. Again, I'll say Vegas Pro 18. And I'm going to change the color of the text just to kind of give it a little bit more realism. I'm going to sample some of the white from the racing stripes on the car and use that as my text color. Okay, and I'm done here because I don't want to resize it like I did a moment ago using the text tools. I'm going to use the position-aware capabilities of the motion tracker to create this for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is mute the track I just put on with the video, or with the text. First thing I need to do is to track the motion of the car. So the motion tracking panel can now be found in several different ways, in several different places. The way I like to get to it is just go through the hamburger menu, and here it is toward the bottom, motion tracking. Brings up the new panel. And everything that was available in the Bezier masking tool in the previous versions of the motion tracking tool are now available here in the motion tracking panel. I won't really go through all of the options here because they haven't changed. You still have, you can still select your precision and your mode and all of that stuff. I'm just going to go with the defaults, balance, precision, and the perspective for my mode. And what I need to do is to add a mask. So I just click the Add Region button, and the mask appears, and I can position it wherever I want. Now we're tracking the front of this car, so I'm going to just move in and try to get, I need to get enough information that tracking can catch hold, but I also want to try to keep it centered as much as possible on the actual grill that I want to put the text over, and you'll see why in a moment. Okay, now I've got my tracking region in place, and I've got a number of different buttons down here. I can track forward, I can track backward, I can track both forward and backward. In this case, my cursor sits right at the beginning of the event, so I really only need to track forward, but out of habit I always click the track both directions button. The progress bar popped up on my second screen, so you can't see it, but it's done now. And if I play this, we can watch the track region and see that it looks like we've done a pretty good job of tracking that, the grill of the car. So now all we need to do is to apply that tracking to the piece of text that we put on. So let's bring the text back up, unmute that track. I'll close the tracking dialog box for a moment. If I play this, you can see again the car moving back and forth behind the text, so obviously we need to apply the tracking to that. Now remember, a few moments ago I didn't resize the text to fit into the grill. And here's the cool thing. I'm going to place my cursor at the beginning again, bring the text or the motion tracking panel back open, and click the motion track transfer button, or drop down arrow, and I've got a couple of different options here. Now the one I want is the titles and text event that I put on my timeline, and what I want to do, instead of tracking location, notice that I have the option to add a picture-in-picture effect to that event automatically, and have the motion tracking panel not only apply the picture-in-picture to the event, but also resize that picture-in-picture and center that picture-in-picture according to the tracking region that I created. So all I do is choose that from the list, and you can see that the text is now sized and positioned according to the tracking panel. Let me close tracking and play this, And you can see that the text moves right along with the car just as if it was part of it. And that's how fast it is to track something and apply the motion or the track motion information to another object. And of course, I've done it with text here, but we can also do it with other pieces of video or an image. I'm going to add a PNG file. And let's trim this up a little bit. And I want to add a Bezier mask to this PNG file because I thought I'd be clever and mask it down to a circle. So I changed to oval. And then I'm going to cover the headlights with that, one of the headlights with that logo. Now, I'm not saying from a design standpoint this is a good idea, but I just want to show you that you can do it. Now, before you saw me apply the picture-in-picture plugin automatically, and it resized the object. Now, in this case, I don't want to do it automatically because, as you saw before, it'll resize the object and place it right in the middle of the track region. So what I'm going to do instead, and it's really cool that you have this kind of flexibility, is I'm going to manually add a picture-in-picture plugin, and then position it and resize it. So I'll resize it so that it essentially covers the headlight here. And of course, you'd take more time to do this exactly if you were really doing it, but that'll do for now. I'm going to duplicate this track, and then on the second track, oops, I changed the cursor location here. On the second track, I will position it over the top of the second headlight. And again, I would try to be more exact about this if I was really doing it, but for the sake of demonstration, this will be fine. So now I don't need the motion tracking panel to apply tracking to these headlights automatically. Now, let me play it first before I apply the tracking, and you'll notice that, right, they don't follow. I don't need the motion tracking panel to add the picture-in-picture for me automatically because I've done that manually. But I still have in the drop-down list now both of those instances of the VEG PDF, not PDF, but the VEG image file. And even though I have this option to apply it to picture-in-picture, the tool is smart enough to know it doesn't need to add a new picture-in-picture effect to my event because I already did that manually, but it's going to still apply the motion tracking data. So let me choose that, let me do it again and choose it for the second one. And now if I did everything correctly according to plan here, when I play this, it should all follow along nicely. And it does. And again, I would have or could have taken more time to make sure I got the things positioned exactly properly and so forth. Let me drop it down to preview so you see a little bit better frame rate here. Starting to bog down my computer a little bit, but you can see that the text and the images follow along really nicely with the motion that we tracked. So the tracking tool that is now a dedicated tool and pulled out from the Bezier masking tool is really powerful and really convenient way to quickly apply tracking. We can track anything and apply, tack anything to it. And it's not just picture-in-picture that we could transfer the information to. Notice in the drop-down list that there's also, if I go to the Mustang, the original video, I could also apply this motion tracking to a Bezier mask effect that was on the original clip. So if for some reason I just wanted to mask a certain part, cut everything else out, and then track that certain part as it moved through my video, I could easily just apply the Bezier masking effect and apply the motion tracking information to that effect. So really cool, really powerful, and just much, much easier to use and much more intuitive and logical than the way it was originally implemented in the Bezier masking tool. Now, that said, we have gotten some feedback already that although users really like this new dedicated tool, they miss having that motion tracking in the Bezier masking tool. And so we've talked to a few people and tried to understand what they're looking for, and we are considering some changes and some optimizations to this that will address some of those issues. So rest assured, we're not done yet with this tool. We're continually working on it, and we're listening to your feedback, and hopefully we can satisfy your need to have motion tracking specifically in the Bezier masking tool as well as in a dedicated place here. Okay, great. So that's the new dedicated motion tracking panel, and I also showed you the tracking information for position-aware OFX plugins. Let's switch to talking a little bit about some of the artificial intelligence work that we did in Vegas Pro 18. Specifically, in the presentation that I did 3 weeks ago, I don't think I talked at all about the colorization tool, or if I did, it was very brief. So let's spend a little bit more time talking about the way that we've leveraged artificial intelligence to help you colorize black and white footage. All right, let me go to my Explorer window here and pull out a couple of clips. First thing I want to do is pull down this old clip. It was shot on some like a high 8 or some different type of format of camera, and you can see it's black and white, and the aspect ratio is kind of messed up, so I'm just going to fix that real quickly by zooming in a little bit with the pan crop tool, the event pan crop tool. Okay, so here's our black and white footage. We can take the colorize filter, which I can find in the video effects, and here it is, colorization, and just drop it onto that clip, and immediately as the default, it colorizes that clip. You can see that it recognized some grass in front, it recognized some leaves on a tree. Maybe could have done a little bit better job here of recognizing these leaves and bushes, but it did interpret some of these as kind of a reddish, so maybe it was a fall day or something, and it interpreted the background as a sky and colored that sky. Now, of course, you have different options here. You can, right by default, we have the luminance enhancement set to none, but we can try a couple of different options and see what happens. That makes it all very blue, so that's not necessarily the way to go, and that one doesn't work for me either. So I'm just going to leave it to none, where I've gotten my best results. I've got some precision controls. I can go to high precision and see what we get there. And that didn't seem to make too much of a difference, so I'm going to set it back to low so that it takes less processing power on my machine here. But you can see that I've got some options. I can invert the reds and the greens, or the greens and the reds and the greens, and it takes a moment for my computer to recalculate all of that. This points out that when you're starting to work with colorization and the other artificial intelligence work that we're doing, you're really going to be starting to put some major requirements for processing on your machine. Now, as I mentioned, I'm using a laptop, and it's really not that powerful of a machine. So trying to do this kind of thing on a laptop, although you can see perfectly well that I can do it, it can be a lot to ask of your machine. Here I've inverted the blue and the yellow, so you can see how that looks if you're after some kind of special effect. I can also shift between red and green and between blue and yellow. So if I'm looking at this and I think, I want a little bit more green in this, I can shift away from the red toward the green and pump up the greens a little bit. If I think that maybe I'm looking a little too yellow, maybe I'll pull some yellow out and put a little bit more blue into it. So you do have some control over how you want to your final product to look. And if I toggle back and forth between not applied, just black and white, and applied, now it's colorized, you can see we're making a really huge difference with this tool. Now, is it absolutely perfect? Well, no. It's using artificial intelligence to make some decisions about what is in the scene and color those things appropriately. And I think it's doing a pretty good job here. Let's try another clip. Here's an old clip from sometime around 100 years ago. And you've got different shots in this clip. Here, the first shot is this soccer match that's going on. And if I go back to my video effects, of course we call it soccer here in the US. Many of you might call it football. And I colorize that. Look what it's done already. It recognized the pitch as green. It added some color to the jackets and the jerseys that the players are wearing. It's colored the sky blue. And again, we can go in and pump up the greens a little bit, make the grass look a little greener. That kind of pops out some of the other colors a little bit. Maybe I want the sky to be a little bit more blue. I can add that to it as well. I can also change the gain. Maybe I want to, for whatever reason, change the gain of the reds, have the reds pop out maybe a little bit more to highlight those. So I can come in here, and using these tools, they're a little difficult to grasp at first, but once you start playing around with these and start tweaking out the settings, you start to get pretty good at making things look a little bit more like you want them to look. Let me toggle this on and off again so that you can see the before, no color, and the colorized version. So very cool. Let's scoot through this clip a little bit further. Now here we might have too much blue, and the cool thing about Vegas Pro, of course, is if I wanted to colorize this section differently, I can easily just split the event and then call up the colorization for that portion, and maybe I take some of the blue out of there, and maybe I will take some of the gain off the blue. So I'm trying to dial it back in, and I can do that clip by clip, piece by piece, event by event, by just splitting the event and making different adjustments. Now later on in this clip we have some different pieces of video. So here's a clip of just some people in the city that might not work so great with the settings that we had before. Looks like it's a little heavy on the red, so maybe I'll pull some red out, put some more green in. Maybe too much yellow, so I'll pull some of that out. But you can see that I can go through and find my different clips and my different footage and colorize each of those completely as I want. Here obviously is too much green in this particular footage, so maybe we take some of the green out and we put some red in. Just really cool what you can do with this, and when I toggle on and off, you can see what a difference it makes. And it's really pretty automatic and pretty well done right out of the bat, right out of the gate. Now I got curious and I wondered, well, what would happen if I had a little bit more modern footage that was shot in black and white? So I found a clip here of this woman sitting on a bridge, and it was shot in black and white. I don't know when it was shot, but it clearly, by the way she's dressed and so forth, this wasn't the 20s, the 1920s or 30s or something like that. This looks like a clip from the later half of the last century, the 80s or 90s or even later. But for whatever reason, they chose to shoot it in black and white. So what happens if we take something like this, which is well shot and doesn't have all the artifacts of flashing and scratches and all that other stuff that you can find with old film, and apply the colorized tool to it? So right off the bat, without even doing anything to it, it actually looks really good. Her skin tone looks pretty good. We got some color in the background. And as I sort of scoot through this a little bit and the camera angle changes, you can see that we've got some red in the middle of the bridge here. Now it doesn't look quite as good. Her skin tones from this angle looks like there's too much yellow, so maybe we pull some yellow out. And maybe we pump up a little bit of red. And maybe we change the gain a little bit to see what we can get there. The point is that you have this control and you can move through it and decide how you want to balance things out. There's too much red in that, so I can pull some of that out. And it works really well, not only on old archival footage, but even on something more modern like this footage that for whatever reason was shot in black and white. Okay, cool. So that's the colorize filter. Let's real quickly touch on noise reduction and flicker removal. Kind of don't have a lot of time here, but I think I can touch on those two real quickly. So let's look at the flicker removal first. I think I showed this in the presentation a couple of weeks ago, but this works really simply and really well. So here's a clip, and you can see a bunch of flickering up in the ceiling from the neon light of the sign, especially up in here. So if I go to my effects window and I say, I'll search for flicker, there it is, flicker control plugin, and let's just use the default and drop it on there. And even just the default without making any changes, when I preview this, you can see it's much less flicker going on up in the ceiling. Now, of course, I've got all kinds of controls here, so I could try different modes. I could try the reduction mode. I can change the analysis window and sensitivity and all of that. So even though right out of the box it looks pretty good, it really stopped a great deal of that flickering, I have even more control. One thing that is cool about this that you might miss, so let's talk about it, is that you can use this also to add flicker. If for some reason you had a clip that you want to make look like it was more of an old video, you could black and white it and so forth and put filters on it, but you can also add flicker to kind of give a special effect. So here we are in flicker control, and this time I'm going to add 60 hertz flicker to that clip. Now when I play it, kind of hard to see it, but it's there. If I jack the sensitivity way up, I think you should be able to see this pretty clearly, that now we have flicker on this clip. And maybe I can change to best full. Let's see if the laptop can handle it. Not very well, but you can see it flickering. And so the flicker control, this is exactly why we didn't call it flicker removal tool, because it lets you remove or add. So we called it the flicker control tool in case for some reason you want to add flicker to a clip like I did here. Okay, let's talk real quickly about the noise reduction filter, the video noise reduction. I'm going to go back up and into my colorize folder, and I have a copy of let's just add the video only. I have a copy of the movie The Great Train Robbery. So here it is. Now, along with some flicker that you see going on here, just from the old camera and scratches and so forth, you can see that there is noise in this clip, video noise in this clip. And I won't spend a ton of time on this, but if I go to my effects and I type in noise to search for the denoise filter, here it is, and drop that on the clip. It takes a moment to do the processing on this little laptop, but you have, I think I'm going to need to, yeah, I'll leave that on best full. I won't be able to play this for you because this laptop just can't keep up with it. But you might be able to tell that it's already removed some of this noise down here in the floor. If you look down in this area and I toggle the noise reduction back on, you can kind of see that it smooths it out a little bit. I'm going to take the amount and pull it all the way up, just so that you can see kind of what it's doing in an exaggerated way. And it's just processing here, trying to get caught up with my move. And when it does, you should be able to see a lot of smoothing down here where the denoise filter took away some of the noise. And let's just crank this up too. Okay, so there you saw it change, where it's now it's taken away some of that noise. I've gone way extreme here, and you probably wouldn't do that. It's taken it away by sort of blurring it and smudging it together. And since I went so far, it's really removed a lot of the detail from the scene. But the point is, as I toggle this on and off, you can see that when I toggle it back on and it finishes catching up with the processing, it has done some processing to remove and hide some of the video noise. So the the denoise filter is a really powerful tool for doing that kind of noise canceling. Okay, I've already used my half hour here. As I said at the beginning, I talked about the last 4 of these in the first webinar that I did 3 weeks ago. I will jump over real quickly to Vegas Pro and show you a little bit of style transfer stuff. Style transfer is definitely something that takes a lot of processing power, so it will definitely take you a moment to see the results of what I do here. But let me just grab a clip. I'll drop that into the timeline, video only. Say yes. Okay, so here's the clip that we're working with. If I want to stylize this clip, make it look like it was, created in the style of famous artists, or apply some other style to it, I can add the stylize plugin, the style transfer plugin. There it is, style transfer. And I've got a whole, in a moment, it's processing right now and trying to catch up with my process, trying to catch up with what I've asked it to do. I've got a whole list of presets. And so I can choose, let's choose the painting Weeping Woman by Picasso. I can take that preset, drop it onto my event, and in a moment you see it apply the style of that painting to my clip. Let's just choose a couple other presets here just so you can kind of see. Let's try Starry Night by Van Gogh, right? And that's what it looked like if you used the style of Van Gogh to stylize your video. And there are several, I don't remember, maybe 15 or 16 presets that you can use. And they're not all necessarily famous paintings or famous artists. For instance, there is a bark pattern here. If I choose that, then it applies the pattern of a bark, tree bark to the clip and stylizes it that way. What else do we have here? Floral pattern. So you could just go through and add these things to see, how you like them. And of course, you can change the details. So if I say, let's go high detail and see what that looks like. Now this is really going to take a little bit. Well, that didn't take quite as long as I thought it might. Let's try sunrise flowers here and see what that looks like. So it takes a minute to process, and there is what it looks like. So if you change the detail, you actually start to see more detail of your original clip. Let's go back to the Starry Night that I tried earlier and see what it looks like now that we've got higher detail. So you've got a lot of different presets and detail settings that you can use to try to dial in the look you want. And I can't play this for you because my computer would never keep up with it. But well, it's just finally caught up to the Starry Night preset that I put on, and that's what it looks like now. My computer would never keep up with me trying to play this for you, but you can see that you can apply these different looks. And rest assured that if you apply these different looks and then play your project on a machine that can actually handle the processing, it will follow through the whole clip with this style being applied to it. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty neat way to stylize your video. Okay, that's about all I've got time to discuss today. Hopefully, even though I went really fast, that you've got a good handle on how the motion tracking panel works now and how easy it is to apply motion tracking to different items, different elements of your project, text, images, other videos, and so forth. The colorization thing, that's really cool. It's fun to play with and fun to see how well you can dig in to create what you want to create the look that you want to create. And don't forget that these other filters that I talked about here, I talked about those 3 weeks ago in the presentation that I did then, so you could go back and look at those to get a feel for what that looks like. Okay, so that's what I've got for you today. I really appreciate you joining me. I hope you learned a little bit. I hope that you are as excited about some of the new tools in Vegas Pro 18 as we are. And start playing with that motion tracking tool. I think you're really going to love it once you start understanding how to apply the tracking to different objects and start, for me, it just starts getting creative ideas going. Now, I'm not, the world's most creative video editor, so what I came up with might have been kind of cheesy. But I'd love to see the things that you guys come up with for this thing. Those of you who do have an eye for video and creation and graphics, it'll be really fun to watch what you guys do with the motion tracking panel, with the colorization tools, with the stylize tools. And I'm looking forward to seeing examples of what you guys do with it. We will have one more of these live presentations next week. Same time on next Monday. And in that presentation, I'll go into a little bit more detail on some of the new things that we did to enhance previous versions, features of previous versions. Like, we'll talk a little bit more about the effects window that you saw me use a couple of times today as I was searching for different effects. We'll talk a little bit more about the color grading panel and some of the improvements that we've made there. And I'll probably have a couple other things to share with you when I get around to actually putting it all together. So don't forget to join us next Monday, same time. That's 11 o'clock Central Time here in the US. That's UTC -5 across the world. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you then. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell if you want to know whenever we go live. Certainly next week, though it's the last live event that we're going to be doing of this series, celebrating the release of Vegas Pro 18 and Vegas Post Suite, definitely not the last live presentation that we'll be doing. So subscribe, notified, all that good stuff. And if you like the video, give it a like. That helps us know what you want to see more of, and helps us know that you appreciate what we're trying to do here. So thanks very much for joining me, and I will talk to you next week. So long.